A new way of living. A way to refresh your life. We spend billions a year looking for the fixes to our problems. Whether that's how we live our life, or your weight, or your mental state. What if something or someone could come along and they could offer you that fix? And it would be so much simpler than you ever imagined. It sounds great. But what if that quick fix, that new way of life, was the most deadly thing you could ever do to yourself? What if people began dying? Welcome to Extraordinary Stories Podcast. Hey, how are you? Are you well? Are you good? I am. Alright, so I've just got one quick shout out to do, and that goes to Heather Sheldon. Now, Heather works in a mental health nursing home for the elderly. And Heather and her team, they're doing a sponsored stationary bike ride. They're travelling quite the distance. And she said, can you give us a shout out just to keep us going? So yeah, of course I can, Heather. And everyone at the Woodcross Care Home, keep on cycling. You're doing a brilliant job. I hope it's going really well. Probably by the time you hear this, the cycle might be over. But you know what? Round of applause for doing it. So well done to you. Okay, if you haven't seen it elsewhere, because I've put it across all the social medias, the exciting news is that the Extraordinary Stories podcast shop is open. There is now merchandise that you can get your hands on, and you can get it all. You can get your mugs, your notebooks, your duvets, your t-shirts, your baby grows, for God's sakes. Also, Aaron McCardle, who has designed the merchandise, has just done the most stunning job on it. I mean, it's really just beautiful, and there are fine art prints available that are just, I just think they're absolutely gorgeous. Aaron has worked his arse off to make the merchandise look incredible, and I'm really proud to be able to have that as the merchandise, because I could have just launched the merchandise as soon as I launched the podcast, and I didn't. I waited because I knew I needed it to be right. I knew I needed it to be the thing that I wanted it to be, and I'm so grateful to Aaron for doing that. So you go to Threadless and just hit ESP if you're on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, any of these, you'll find the link quite easily. But if not, if you go to Threadless, type in Extraordinary Stories Podcast, you will find it. So yeah. Alright, this story. Well, let me tell you. Sometimes a story, it sort of lands in my lap when I'm actually looking elsewhere. And this is exactly what happened with this story. So I started looking at one sort of curious case of something that happened And I thought, all right, okay. And I was like, that's quite good, that story. I quite like that. I might look at that. Did a bit more research, and it opened up a whole world of stuff that I did not know was there. So, I think you're going to love this story. Are you ready? Okay, let's go. Alright, before I even begin to talk about the people in this story, I'm going to set my stall out nice and early. And I'm going to say this. This story deals with a lot of people's individual beliefs, a lot of people's ideologies, ways of living your life. And I am not knocking those at all. I'm not. I might knock some of the people who are involved in the story, but that's the people, not knocking the ideologies. Your beliefs can be whatever your beliefs want to be. They have whatever beliefs you want in this world. I don't care. It doesn't affect me. It doesn't affect you what my beliefs are. So, as we go through this, don't think that I'm knocking people's beliefs or what they think or what they believe in. I'm not. I'm just telling you about some very weird beliefs and things that have had really horrific impacts on people. Alright, let's start where I started. Verity Lynn is a 49-year-old woman. She's an Australian woman. Now, she is a former primary teacher, and she grew up in Australia, and she taught in like various schools, various places, for years and years and years. Now, if people were to describe Verity, the word that they would often use is bohemian. And where that came from really was her style of dress, her sort of straggly hair. You know, she would wear like long floaty tops, and she was into lots of like, you know, different kind of things like vegetarianism, and like, you know, she really believed in like growing your own vegetables and all that sort of stuff. And so people just use the word bohemian to describe Verity. Not sure that it's the best word to describe someone, but okay. Now, friends of Verity would say she was just the loveliest person in the world. She was dedicated to teaching. She was so passionate about teaching kids, and especially about kids who didn't have easy access to education. She would work really hard to make sure that kids who came from deprived areas, really poor families, they had a chance at education. So she'd worked, as well as working in Australia, she'd kind of worked all over the world. And Verity finds herself in a place called Findhorn. Now, if you don't know what Findhorn is or where Findhorn is, let me tell you. It's in Scotland. It's in a part of Scotland called Moray. Now, Findhorn is really well known in Scotland, and in fact, it's known around the world. I mean, you may well have heard of it. And it's kind of famous because it's this town, essentially, is what it is, full of just the most glorious nature in the world. I mean, it's just got the most incredible nature. But what makes Findhorn famous is that in about the 1970s, maybe, when only about, I would say, 300 people lived there, it was this small little town, and it became the first town in Scotland to become completely sustainable. So people in Findhorn would grow their own vegetables. They believed in solar power. They believed in recycling. I mean, we're going back to the 70s. Do you know what I mean? How many people in the 70s were recycling? You know, so it sort of got this reputation as being this quite progressive, but also a place that attracted a certain type of person. A certain type of person who was into that sustainable kind of life. And you know, was wanting to sort of connect with nature and, you know, swim in a river and do all those kind of things. I've got a couple of like hippie. I hate the word hippie, but I'm going to use it. I've got a couple of hippie mates, and they go every year to Findhorn, right? And what they do is they go. There's like a really famous like sort of river that runs through it, and they go skinny dipping in this river. And there's this like certain tree, and they they climb this tree, and they have to climb it naked. It's like a ritual for them, and it's just like this is kind of the like strange culture of Findhorn. You go there and like it's freedom, you kind of express yourself, you take off your clothes and you don't care where you are. And oh yeah, every year they're like, Barry, come with us, you'd really like it. And I'm like, no, you know what, I'm no prude, but I am not climbing a tree with my twig and berries out. I'm not. Like, I'm just not into it. Not having it. Ultimately, it's gorgeous. It's this absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous place. So, it's now, I said there was 300 people in the 70s. There are thousands upon thousands of people live in Findhorn now. So, Verity, the teacher. Verity had been living there for about 6 years. She'd been living the sort of eco life, and she'd been teaching in the local schools. Now, the time had come when the school offered her the chance to have a sabbatical. So, she was allowed 6 months off, and she could do in that 6 months whatever she wanted. And Verity decided she was going to travel the world. She was going to take off from Findhorn, and she was just going to go and she was going to travel. So the night before she leaves, all of her work friends, they come together, they meet in a restaurant, they have a curry, they have some drinks, and the next day, Verity is off on her travels. How then is it possible that 2 weeks into her sabbatical, Verity's dead body is found 20 miles away in a camping site in Scotland? She's found dead in a field, and the cause of death is dehydration. Her body is checked over by police, by doctors, and there's no foul play. She hadn't been attacked. She hadn't been brutally murdered in a field. It was dehydration. A post-mortem showed that her body hadn't had water or food for 5 days, and her body had shut down on itself. Near where they found Verity's body, they found a diary that she had been keeping. And she had recently written some notes in the days before she was found dead. She'd written some notes about how she was planning to experience being spiritually cleansed and recharged both mentally and physically. In her belongings, she had a book, and the book was titled Living on Light by Yasmine Grieve. Verity's death came as a huge shock to everyone who knew her. I mean, she hadn't even left Scotland yet. She was going on this, 6-month travel of the world. And here she was, her dead body found in a field 20 miles from where she had been working. And people were like, how has this happened? Like, what is going on here? What is this? Questions were also being asked of, right, what is the book that she had? What is Living on Light? And who is Yasmine Grieve? Yasmaheen Grieve was born in 1957 in New South Wales, Australia. Now, she wasn't born Yasmaheen, she was born Ellen. So she began her work life by working in finance. She worked in the finance industry. And then she began to get into meditation, ideas around Buddhism, yoga, sort of spiritual ways in which to live your life. Fine. All good. Now, in 1992, she had spent a long time sort of understanding meditation practices. She'd travelled to India. She had really investigated sort of Buddhist ideas around how you live your life, how you eat, how you sustain yourself. And what she started to work out quite quickly is that actually she could really do something with her understanding of the powers of meditation and the powers of living your life in a different way. I mean, she was incredibly passionate about it. Her belief around meditation and yoga and breathing was such that we could all achieve a higher plane of living. She was beginning to believe that we were all living wrong. We were all living wrong, and that she could teach us how to live correctly in our lives. So, just a little bit about who Yasmaheen Grieve is. Well, as a child, she will say that she saw the world differently. She just saw it differently from every other child her age. She says that she has always had an awareness of the spiritual world around her. And even when she was 5 years old, 6 years old, she just knew that there was another life force out there and that she would one day be the person who could help us all unlock that. She just always felt, and these are her words, more awake than other human beings. So as she grew up and her meditation begins to really take hold, she actually starts to become interested in the idea of mastering the human mind. She believes that she has the kind of power to be able to help us master our minds, because we're not doing it right at the moment. We're not living life correctly, but she can put us on the right path. Now, when she was about age 22, she had a couple of kids. Her first marriage had fallen apart. She was working as a waitress, and then this happened. She received a divine message. And the divine message told her she should be living her life surviving entirely on air. Yes, air. She didn't need food. She could survive on air and, most importantly, light. Light and air was all that she needed. Now, she's gone quite far down the road of sort of understanding Buddhism, understanding meditation practices. She's looked at some sort of 16th century monks who might have had these beliefs as well, and now she has received this message. She also, after this message, receives a second message, and this time it's Jesus. And Jesus comes to visit Yasmaheen. Guess where? He visits her in the shower. So she's in the shower one day. Here she is. She's like, la 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 la, lathering up. She's like, ooh, got shampoo in my hair. She's like, great. And Jesus appears in the shower. And Jesus tells her, this is the message you need to share with the world. That it's possible to live without food. Nobody needs food. We just need light and air. That's all that we need. And so, yeah, once she's heard it from Jesus in the shower, she's on a path. She's like, Jesus has come to me in the shower. He's told me this is what I need to do. I'm doing it. I mean, I'm sorry, right? I have to say, I'm not doubting people who say that they've had visions or they've been visited. That's fine, right? That's what you think. But in the shower, I'm not kidding. If Jesus visited me in the shower, I think I would have to be like, I'm really sorry. This is a really inconvenient time for me. I'm in the middle of something, right? I'm in the middle of something right now. this is kind of awkward. Could you not have waited till I was like out and like I had a towel around me? At least this is, but no. For Jasmine, she's like, I've had these divine messages now. I've had them, and so she drops her surname and she just becomes Jasmine. And she begins her work as a sort of prophet, a sort of guru of not having to eat. You just breathe air and you take in the light beams from the world, and these things will sustain you. You don't need food. We're doing it all wrong. Why are we all concerned about eating? Eating's stupid. We don't need to eat. We just need breath and we need light. That's all that we need. So, Yasmine, she sort of brands herself now by this first name thing, you know, a bit like a kind of Cher, Madonna. People who go by their first names, I don't know, Ronaldo. You know, check me putting in a football reference. Oh, I'm so macho. So she's out there and she's trying to spread the message of this practice of not eating food, but instead what you do is you just survive on air and on light. And the term for it is breatharianism. Have you ever heard more of a mouthful in your life? Right, I'm going to say it. Try saying it after me. Right, give it a go. Breatharianism. Go. Did you manage it? Right, because it took me about 10 attempts to get it right. I was like sitting myself going, breathanaz, vegetarian? What do you call it? Right, one more time. Breatharianism. Go. Right. So, breatharianism is her practice. That's what this is. It's a way forward for people that will ultimately change your life entirely, because you will no longer need food to sustain yourself. So, just to talk about Yasmine as a person, well, she's really interesting, right? So some of you, I think Australians, I think you might actually have a very clear picture of her because she is Australian and was on a lot of Australian TV for a while. Other countries in the world, you might not know what she's like. So she's attractive, she's blonde, she's slim. But the thing that I think defines her the most is she has the breathiest and the calmest voice you have ever heard. I'm talking like she is the calmest sounding person in the world. And even right in this story, things are going to get a bit rough for Yasmine a little bit later. They are going to get rough. Now, even during those rough moments, she maintains that smooth, breathy, controlled voice. Now, because I can't figure out really as a podcast how you use lots of different clips from different things without copyright issues and all that sort of stuff, I'll have to just like give you a sort of impression of what Yasmeen sounds like. But yeah, I mean, Australians, please forgive me because this will probably be awful, but this is kind of what the sort of vibe you get from her when you hear her talking. Human beings have been living their lives misguided for years. We just need air and light to be able to survive. I take a deep breath every morning and I get that breath of air and that sustains me for the day. That was terrible, but it's actually not as terrible as you would maybe think. Go and look at Yasmeen being interviewed. That's kind of what she sounds like. She's just that kind of like breathy and it's relaxed. And she sounds like a meditation tape the whole time. So, in 1998, after a couple of years of really being an advocate for breatharianism, she publishes a book. And the book is called Return of the Light Masters. Okay, what's that all about then? Well, what she's really selling to the world is her idea of breatharianism, and within that, what she's selling is a 21-day program in which you, me, anybody, your mum, your dad, your granny, your auntie, anybody can undertake a 21-day process in which they will eventually not need to eat food. So if you for 21 days can sustain yourself on air and on light without any water, without anything to eat, then you are fully beginning to understand the breatharian way of living. I mean, okay, right, I'm going to say this at this point. Maybe you're divided. Maybe some people are thinking, this is time to ring the bullshit alarm. Or maybe you're thinking, okay, well, actually, yeah. I mean, if this is part of like Buddhist teachings or Buddhist whatever, then maybe there's truth in it. I don't know. Perhaps. But this is what I'm saying to you is this is where it was at this moment, is that she was very much the public face of this new way of living, which when it got sort of truncated down and was given to people was, yeah, you just don't need to eat or drink, you just basically need to breathe and get some light, and that's all the sustenance you're ever going to need to survive in your life. She was kind of like saying, it's the breath of life. It will help you in your world. And people were believing it. People were buying it and they were going, okay. Now, here's the issue. The people who were buying it were, and Yasmeen knew this, she fucking knew this. The people who were buying it were sometimes the people who engaged in, you know, sort of more spiritual or more, what's the word I'm looking for? Holistic ways of living. Sometimes it was people who wanted to lose weight, and she knew that she was targeting those people. Because if people thought that literally you could for 21 days not eat and not drink and you would survive it because you've got air and you've got light, then, you know, fine, you're going to drop a lot of weight in 21 days. Now, she will claim, right, she will say this has been her practice for the past 14 years. She will actually say, I haven't eaten in 14 years. Okay, fine. And she's becoming now a public figure. She's now appearing on TV. She's got her book out. And she's a real advocate for this is the way to live. And it's so dangerous. It's so dangerous. I mean, here's the thing. Like, how many times have we seen new fads, new supposed fixes come along and people buy into these things? And again, I'll just say, they can just be so dangerous if they're not handled properly, but people will always buy in to new things. What was I don't even know what the wine diet was, but I remember lots of people talking about the wine diet. I don't know, what was it? You just drank wine? Is that what you did? And that was, and you lost weight? Or what's her name? That, the one that used to be married to Chris Martin, the actress. Oh, Gwyneth Paltrow. So she's got a website that sells all sorts of like ways of life and new things that you can do. And she was selling something that was like vaginal stones. And they were like basically stones that a female can put inside of her. And it means that your vagina won't attract any sort of negative behaviour. I mean, what? I mean, my apologies to you if you're listening to this episode and you're currently got some vaginal stones in. But but yeah, people will believe things. They will buy into things. This is what it is. So her 21-day programme of breatharianism, it begins to run across the world. She releases a documentary. She releases another book, and this is the book Living on Light. Within a year of Yasmaheen releasing her documentary and her book, she has managed to move from a humble home in Brisbane, Australia, to a 5-bedroom home in Australia with a rooftop pool. She is raking in the money. In her personal life, I'd already said she's got 2 kids, but they're grown up by now. They're off living their own life. But she had married for a second time, and she'd married a man called Jeff Ferguson. And Jeff had spent a long time in prison for fraud. So, I mean, breatharianism wise, it's looking good for her because it's really gaining a lot of publicity. Now, 1999 comes around and she's on TV constantly. And although there's a lot of like, okay, who's this crackpot? What's going on here? This is bizarre. There's a lot of people who are like, no, she's a bit of a guru. She really knows what she's talking about. Now remember where this all started. It all started with Verity, found dead from dehydration in Scotland, with a copy of Yasmaheen's book near her. Well, that case will always sit slightly oddly and will always be questioned. Some people will say there is no doubt whatsoever that Verity was following breatharianism and that she was trying this 21-day programme and that's what killed her. Interestingly, the foundation run by Yasmaheen, they employ a personal investigator to establish lots of other theories in the death of Verity. But ultimately, it will always be put down to her attempting the 21-day fast of no food and no water. Let's leave Yasmaheen for a second and we're going to go to another part of Brisbane. So, there is a couple who live in Brisbane and they are in their early 60s. Jim and Eugenia Pesnick. Now, Jim and Eugenia, they own a big house with a huge piece of land behind them, and on this land they have different caravans, they have different sort of huts, they have different places that people can come and they can stay. Jim and Eugenia are breatharians. They are big fans of this practice. And what they do is they offer people the opportunity to come to their home during the 21-day process, at the very start of their breatharian journey. And they're there to offer support. They're there to be on hand, be ambassadors, and help these people understand how to live their life properly. They claim this is how they live their life. They haven't eaten food in years. Instead, they live off of the light and they live off of the air. And so they just want to help other people. Jim and Eugenia picked up a woman called Lanny Morris at the airport in Brisbane. Now, Lanny Morris is a mother of 9, and she had become really into the idea of breatharianism, and she had found the couple who would help her. So they got Lanny from the airport, they drove her to their home, and they put her in one of the caravans on their property, and the preparations for her 21-day introduction into her new way of life began. No food, no water, just surviving on light. So Lanny, as I said, she was a mother of 9 and she was married. So she'd left behind her husband and her kids. And the thing about Lanny that people will say is she was always into trying new things. So, she was a vegetarian way before it was popular. She was a vegan way before people really cared about it or whatever. And when she said, I'm going to become a breatharian, I'm just going to live on light and air, her family went, oh God, right, do you know what this will be? This will be another 6-week fad. She'll not, you know what I mean? It'll just be one of these things that she tries and whatever. And, they were like, okay, off you go, right, give it a go, see you later, we'll see you in a few weeks when you come back and decide that actually now you want to be something else, just because that's the way that she was. Anyway, here is Lanny, and she is staying with Jim and Eugenia. Now, here's how the whole thing kind of shakes down, and I'm going to warn you here, it's not very pretty. Once Lanny is given her place to stay in the caravan park, her 21-day journey begins. So for this couple, they had seen 30 people maybe through the initial start of the process with good results. But were they any kind of experts? Jim and Eugenia? No. They were just a couple who had read Yasmin's book and were basically following the rules and living off the light. And now we're suddenly these ambassadors of it, which again is just dangerous again. So they put Lanny in this caravan. It's deep in the back of their land. So she had to be isolated. That's one of their rules. You have to be isolated for the start of the journey. So Lanny sets herself up and the process begins. Day 1, day 2, fine. Nothing to report. Day 3, Jim is in the garden and he hears an incredible thud coming from Lanny's caravan. And when he opens the door, she's lying on the floor of the caravan because she's fallen out of bed. And she apologises for the noise. She says, I'm really sorry, I simply fell out of bed. 6 days into her breatharian journey, Lanny begins to lose the use of her right arm and her right leg. And she's growing incredibly weak. Jim and Eugenia, they assure her this is just part of the process. By day 9, Lanny has lost the power of speech and she has become incontinent. So, panicking, Jim phones a doctor. Now, the doctor is a friend of his, and this is key information. also a fellow breatharian. And Jim says to him, right, what should I do? Like, she's paralysed down the right side of her body. She's incontinent and she can't speak. She can't actually speak. And the doctor says, this is just a part of the process. Jim and Eugenia, they believe him. They go, okay, you're right, actually, you're right. This is she just needs to go through this and then she'll come out the other side and then she'll be in a better state as a human being. She'll have fully seen the light. She'll have fully understood it. Jim will also say part of this paralysis and loss of speech, it's probably down to her, and I quote, childish refusal to accept the spiritual journey that she is on. Give me Jim and Eugenia's heads right now and I will fucking knock them together. You idiots. You fucking idiots. Do something. Ugh. Day 11. Lanny is completely bedbound in the couple's caravan and she is now vomiting black liquid. The black liquid, it's lying in pools around her bed. She can't speak. She cannot move a bit of her body. Jim and Eugenia, they continue to believe this is just the process working. On day 12, Lanny begins to choke on the black liquid that she's bringing up. So Jim takes a small piece of plastic, he puts it in her mouth, pushes it down into the back of her throat to help her breathe, and all it does is it makes her choking worse. She spits out the bit of plastic. The couple agree, right, now we're going to have to rush her to the hospital. There's nothing else we can do. They get her to the hospital and doctors are like, what the fuck is this? What? This is a terrible state for a human being to be in. Why was she not here earlier? What's going on? They immediately hook her up to all the machines and she's in a coma. Within 2 days, and before her 9 kids and her husband can get to the hospital, Lanny is dead. Her kidneys have failed. Her heart has given up. The paralysis down the right side of her body was the result of a massive stroke. So for a woman who went on an adventure, who read a book and thought that these 21 days were going to change the rest of her life, she's left behind 9 kids and a husband. Jim and Eugenia are arrested and they're charged with negligence leading to the death of Lanny. So they await sentence. They both continue to speak proudly and loudly about the benefits of breatharianism. And when it all shakes down, they both go to prison for negligence in the death of Lanny. Jim gets 6 years in prison and Eugenia gets 3. So, it's not looking great for Yasmaheen. It's not looking good at all. If you were her right now, you'd be like, oh, shit. Oh, fucking hell. It's all going wrong. And, you know, I think what's really important is what sort of changed is, I mean, it's sort of what I alluded to earlier on. You know, it was a bit jokey beforehand. It was a bit like, oh, who's this crazy crackpot guru telling us we can live on air? Well, it's not so funny now that we've had this horrendous death of Lanny. I mean, a really brutal death for a fit person to go through. And the death in Scotland is still hanging around. And so these begin to really change the focus of Yas Maheen. And she says things in interviews like, I'm not responsible. This is a 16th century practice. I didn't invent it. Well, maybe not. Maybe you didn't invent it, but you're certainly selling it. You're certainly living in a fucking 5-bedroom house with a rooftop swimming pool off of the benefits of it. So don't backtrack and say, oh, actually, I didn't invent it. That's not a defence. That's not a fucking defence at all. Stand up for it. If you really believe in it, stand up for it. So she has an appearance on the TV show 60 Minutes in Australia. And basically what they're doing is they're going, right, okay, Yas Maheen, there's now 2 horrible deaths from what you're preaching is a thing. Prove to us. Prove that this is how you live your life. So they say this to her. Look, can we do maybe a documentary with you? What we'll do is we will come round to your house and we'll just get a kind of idea of how do you live your life? Like, what's day to day like for Yas Maheen? Like, what does her home look like? What's going on? Now, she's like, okay, I'll think about it. And then she says, yeah, okay, fine, you can come round. So, she lets them into her home. They look around. And of course, I mean, I think this is what we would all do. I know, I certainly know it's the first thing I would do. They go to her fridge. They open it. And when they open her fridge, they find that it is stocked full of a pizza. It's got chicken. It's got desserts. It's got milk. It's got eggs. It's basically just a full fridge. And she says, this is direct quote. She says, it's for my husband's stomach. And they say, all right, okay. It's for your husband, is it? And she says, yes. He eats a perfectly normal amount of food for anyone else, but I don't. All right, okay. So you're telling me your husband comes home at night and he's like, ooh, I'll just make a big, sexy pepperoni pizza. And you're sitting there being like, I'm fine. I'm having light beams for my dinner. Okay, so suspicion is beginning to grow around it. And also, there is the real mounting pressure of the 2 deaths, and she's never really addressed them. When she does address them, what she says is just horrific. She says the 2 people that died trying breatharianism just simply weren't enlightened enough to be on the path. Oh, that does my fucking head in. What a shit thing to say. What a terrible thing to say about people who bought into your system, to say, oh, I'm sorry they're dead. They just weren't enlightened enough to get through it. So 60 Minutes, the TV programme, they air this programme with the showing of the fridge, and all it does is it just makes people want more and more and more of Yas Maheen on TV. So they go back to it and they say, okay, we would like to do something over 7 days with you. Are you up for it? It's this. We will basically put you in a room, and for 7 days, you won't eat, you won't drink. You know, you'll live by the principles that you supposedly live by, and we will film you for that whole entire time. Now, she thinks about it, and she wants to say no, but ultimately she kind of has to say yes, because she's become the face of now what is this big, new way of living. So she says, yes, okay, I'll do it. They say, okay, but what we also need is we need a doctor to be on hand at all times. And she says that's absolutely fine. When they're agreeing this, she says to them, "Can I be placed somewhere near the beach?" And they say no. So, filming begins and they put her in a room. Day 1 and day 2, they pass with no fuss. So she's not had any food and not had any water and is supposedly living as she always does. Now the TV show at this point is starting to wonder, oh, have we gone a bit wrong here? Actually, are we about to be proven wrong, and actually can you maybe live like this? But they're not sure. But then day 3 comes, and that's when things start to go really south. Yasmaheen starts to complain that they've put her somewhere where she can't access the correct nutrients from the light, and that they've put her in somewhere that's polluted with smoke and with smog, and this is making her feel unwell. Bear in mind, she lives in the city day to day. She complains and she complains and she complains, and what they eventually do is they move her. So they get her out of the place that she was in, and they get her to a room near some like mountains, near some greenery with some fresher air. So that was day 3. By the 4th day, some very odd things are beginning to happen to Yasmaheen's health. She'd lost 8 pounds in weight over 3 days. Her speech was beginning to slur, and her body was weak. She was having difficulty with her basic motor skills, but she insisted she was fine. This is how she lives her life. And she said, "I will emerge at the end of 7 days, and I will be singing, and I will be dancing, and I will be the happiest person in the world." Day 5, the doctor does a check and is very concerned. Yasmaheen has become severely dehydrated. Her speech now, by this point, is so slurred, it sounds like she is really, really drunk. I mean, it just sounds like she's absolutely wasted. So the guy from 60 Minutes, the TV presenter, he goes in and he interviews her and he says to her, "You're moving in slow motion and your speech is really slurred. It does not seem like you're well." And she's like, "I'm fine." And he's like, "You don't sound like you're fine at all." I mean, she's actually, it really is beginning to sound like she has been drinking for about 48 hours. It's really awful. The doctor examines her again, and by day 6, the doctor says, "We've got to stop because she is in danger of now kidney failure. She's in danger of her entire body shutting down." Now, how do you think Yasmaheen takes this? Well, she will not allow anyone to say that she has failed and that she isn't a breatharian who's living on air alone. But the filming stops. The TV show, they get really concerned that actually she might die in this situation. She is in real health danger, and she never wants to be able to say it's not possible to live on air. So what she does is she blames the TV show. She says, "They put me in a room where they knew I couldn't get fresh air, where they knew there would be smoke and smog, and they wanted me to fail. They've set me up for failure." She puts out a press release at the end of it when she says, "What appears to be delusional to some is simply a preferable reality for others. For without our dreams, our visions, humanity has no hope." What? What are you talking about? Sort it out. Now, can you imagine, can you just imagine, or maybe you lived through it and you remember it, the backlash to her failed breatharian experiment on TV, on one of Australia's major TV shows. So eating disorder groups are protesting against her. Doctors are coming out and saying, do not listen to this woman. She is talking nonsense. No one can live like this. But the worry is this. People are still believing it. A mother of 2 in Switzerland is found dead by her 2 teenage sons 3 days into her breatharian journey. The number of deaths across the UK, Germany, Switzerland and Australia, they're just continuing to grow from people who are going into the 21-day programme. In Belgium, a young woman aged 24 is living with 3 females in a flat share. The 3 females that she lives with are all breatharians. The 24-year-old isn't, but she agrees that she will give it a go. 5 days into her journey, she's found dead in her house. She has starved to death, and the 3 other people who lived in that house were all charged with negligence for not helping her when she was clearly struggling. So what about Yasmaheen now, these days? Well, she's still around. She's still promoting the practice. But over time, she's gone back on the 21-day plan. And she says it's just not advisable for everyone. She starts to sort of change her tune a little bit about I've not eaten for, 14, 15 years. She says at one point, I've actually been consuming for many years herbal teas. And then she says, 5 years ago, I had half of a chocolate biscuit. Who has half a chocolate biscuit? Be quiet. Come on. Nobody has half a chocolate biscuit and puts it back. Come on. What are you talking about? So, she's offered $40,000 to take a blood test publicly to have the results shown to everyone, so they can test her blood and see what her sugar levels are, what's going on in there, and she refuses. She says, a microscope is not needed. With a microscope, you can't see spiritual energy. Again, apologies, everyone. Then, when she's refused the $40,000, $1 million Australian dollars are put on the table. And again, it's for a blood test. People are saying, practice what you preach. If you're saying this is how you live, here's $1 million. Take a blood test. It shouldn't be that fucking hard for you to get a blood test. Nope, she won't do it. She absolutely refuses. Yasmaheen, it's said, would pass a lie detector test about breatharianism because she so deeply believes what she is telling other people. And whether she will ever admit that she's not living her life by those rules is a whole other story. There's a brilliant story about her. This was only a few years ago. She was travelling from Australia to America for a breatharian conference. She booked into the flight, and as she's going through the various steps of it, she orders a meal for the flight. And the Australian woman who's processing the order says to her, hang on, aren't you Yas Maheen? Why have you ordered a meal? And she says, oh, well, obviously the meal's not for me. I'm just ordering it so that I can give it to someone else on the flight. Whatever. Whatever. Shut up. So instead of being in a place where she is promoting this practice, she now finds herself in a place where she's actually defending it, is what she's doing. There have been a reported 5 deaths across the world from people attempting Yas Maheen's 21 days introduction to breatharianism. And those are just the deaths that we know about. We don't know about the people who've tried it and had kidney failure, or the people who've had breathing problems, or the people who've had strokes. This woman is promoting something dangerous for people. And you know, if you Google breatharianism now, you will see that right now, in August 2019, there are people who claim that they're still living in this way. You'll find there's one incredibly annoying. She's a Instagram influencer or whatever these things are. I don't really know what they are, but she's an Instagrammer who is a sort of young woman, I would say about mid-20s, super skinny. All of her pictures are her in a tiny pair of pants and a tiny little bra, and she's there going, I live on air, I don't eat food, I follow Yas Maheen's way of living. And if you look at her pictures, she's skeletal. She's absolutely like so skin and bones. So it's worrying that there has been 5 deaths and that people right now are still buying that book and they're still following that practice because it's so dangerous. But Yas Maheen continues. She's still talking at conferences. She's still writing books. She's got her own YouTube channel. I swear, go and just listen to her breathy Australian voice because she's still out there. So I'm going to end with a quote of hers, and it says this: if you haven't found the light that will nourish you, you may well have the intention to become a breatharian, but in fact, you may just be putting your body through food deprivation. I cannot help all of those on the journey to becoming a breatharian. I cannot guide everyone's spiritual light. And so ends the story. Alright then, well, there you go. There's Yas Maheen. There's breatharianism. Please do me a favour. Don't decide tonight that you're just going to try living on air. Think it through. Try and, be reasonable about your choices. Again, I will just repeat at the beginning, I feel like I'm always covering myself with these things, and I don't know why I feel like I need to do that, because there's podcasts out there that say all manner of ridiculous things. I'm not knocking beliefs. I'm really not. It's not what I'm knocking at all. I've done a lot of yoga in my life, and I love yoga, and I do think the power of breathing is something incredible. I struggle to maybe make the next step that says it's how I want to sustain myself. I don't know. Maybe I need to investigate that a little bit more. Do I really want to? No, I don't. But what I'm saying is, if you do, that's fine. Go for it. I'm not knocking those beliefs. What I am saying is that when someone is a self-styled guru and becomes this kind of, like, I don't know, presence and face of it, then they have to have some level of responsibility within it when people start dying because of it. And she just refuses to have it. I'll just say this very quickly. One of the best things that you can watch, right, is, I don't know if other people in other countries would really know him, but there's a man in the UK called Jeremy Paxman. So Jeremy Paxman is a journalist and TV presenter in the UK, and he, for many, many years, has presented a programme called Newsnight. Now, Jeremy Paxman is one of the fiercest and a most, oh my god, he's like a pit bull. He's like a vicious dog. He's honestly, he's insane. But that's what's made him famous. Is you can put in front of Jeremy Paxman the biggest world leaders, and quite often that's who he interviews. So he will interview, the president. He will interview the prime minister of any country, the world leaders. He is fearless in how he interviews people, because if he doesn't think he's getting the right answer out of people, he will just continue to ask the same question over and over and over. And if they've lied about something, he will call them out about lying. He's fierce. He's actually brutal, right? So if you go into YouTube, you can find, like, just type in Jeremy Paxman. You'll probably find the top hit will be like best moments. You'll see his 5 top moments with people, and they're so fucking awkward to watch. You're squirming watching it, because he just will not let go. Anyway, he has an interview with Yasmeen after the first death of Verity in Scotland. And she is so good, right? She is brilliant, because she does all her, I'm just a breathy Australian, and she starts to talk in riddles. At one point she starts going, I see my body as like a computer, and you download the software. And he's just like, bullshit. But she's very, very good at staying on what the kind of like, what she's been programmed to say. Jeremy Paxman does an amazing job of really getting her on the ropes. He just like cuts to the heart of her. He's like, people are dying. You're telling people to live on air. This is nonsense. What are you talking about? It's honestly, just go and find it on YouTube, because it's really interesting how he kind of like manages. It's a dead short interview, but he just manages to kind of like really cut into her. So I think that'll give you a really good example of what she's like when she's being interviewed. Alrighty, well, I'm going to get out of here. Yeah, so just a reminder that you can go and get your Extraordinary Stories podcast merchandise now if you go to Threadless. And yes, so that's really about it from me. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Until the next time, okay, goodbye.
It didn't affect me really one way or the other. I would imagine from the look on his face, let's get it on, let's do it, let's get it over. Let's get it on, let's do it, let's get it over.